Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Breakthrough, a Dale Carnegie podcast. My name is Faith Wright, and I am your host for this episode. We have here with us a special guest who I have just recently gotten to know and enjoyed getting to know her through our conversations. We met through mutual friends, and the work that she's doing, I was so inspired by that I said, I need to bring her on the podcast to share more about what she does, what advice she has to give to Gen Z, because she currently works with Gen Z. Jennifer Capps is at NC State and is the Assistant Vice Provost of the NC State Innovation and Entrepreneurship. She has built her career on numerous campuses. And we're going to hear from her today about her journey through that and what lifelong learning is all about. So, Jennifer, welcome to the podcast and thanks for being here.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Awesome. So, if we go back to Jennifer in college and she's walking on campus, would you describe for us what she is like? What are her interests? And did she think that she was going to be maybe where you are today?
That's such a great question. So, Jennifer on campus, the future that she saw for herself back in the 90s is completely different than the life that she has actually ended up living. And that's a good thing. It's a really good thing for me. When I was in college, I had very predetermined notions of what I was supposed to be doing and how I was supposed to be learning, and really what success should, quote unquote, look like for me. And I was living my life based on those definitions. And it wasn't until I started to shift my perspective and take control of my own definitions, my own learning, that's when things started to click and make a whole lot more sense. But that didn't happen to me until after college. I kind of wish it had happened sooner.
When was that switch? Was it in your mid-20s, later 20s?
You know, I think it started while I was in college, but it became much, much, much clearer to me around my mid-20s or so. When I came into college, I was studying accounting. And accounting is a great career, and I did well in my classes, but I hated it. Like, I hated doing the work. And I thought, if I have to do this every day for the rest of my life, I don't think I'm going to enjoy it. And then I thought, well, maybe this accounting thing is more fun when you're out in the workforce doing it. So let me go get some internships. Let me try it out and see if I like it better, outside of the classroom, because it's a different scenario. So I did that. Turns out it was very, very different, but I still didn't love what I was doing every day, right? Some people love doing the accounting. I just wasn't one of them. But throughout that journey of exploration, I fell into this world of startups. I actually went in and helped some startups create their books, right? Their accounts payable, accounts receivable. And so I accidentally found this thing that I was like, "Ooh, this is cool. Like, let me learn a little bit more about that." So and this is where I started to figure out what taking ownership of my own learning and my own life meant for me. I just didn't have the confidence to actually do it yet. So I continued with accounting. I graduated with an accounting degree, and I thought, what's next? And I had absolutely no idea what was next for me. And that's when I started making some changes, and things started to click a little bit more then.
Ooh, I'm curious about the changes that you made, but I feel like a lot of students can relate to where you were at, of maybe, man, I wish I could do this, but I just don't have the confidence, right? It's like, maybe if I had the confidence, then I could go after that dream or do those things that I really want to do. But let me just hang back for a little bit, do my thing until I muster up the confidence, right? To do that. What would you say is the breakthrough moment in your life that helped you to discover, man, if I make these changes, I can really live out a career that I enjoy and that is fulfilling and life-giving?
That's such a good question. I think anytime you're going down a path and you realize, hey, maybe this isn't my path, and you have to make a major change, whether that is, what you're studying in school, what job you're going to accept, even down to the friend group that you hang out with. When you have to make a major change, it's kind of a struggle because you're changing who you are. You're kind of admitting that, hey, what I've been doing hasn't been working out, and that's hard for a lot of people to admit. You're saying, I've got to get comfortable letting go of the person that I thought I was going to be and start being more accepting of the person that I might be able to become. And that's really hard for a lot of people. And not everybody is likely going to understand or support your decision. And that's really hard for a lot of people. So for me, as I was going through graduation, I was thinking about graduate school. These are all the things that were going through my head. I think my breakthrough moment was saying, can I accept all of these things that are hard? Am I willing to face them? Am I willing to adapt and get through the challenges that are going to come with them? And once I was, if people don't understand this, but I'm okay with people not understanding this. That was really my breakthrough. And when things started to shift pretty drastically for me.
As you develop that mindset of, I'm going to go after this anyway, even if people don't support me, right? That movement in your life had to have confidence follow it, I guess, where you were acting in such a way of, you know what? I don't have the confidence maybe right now, but I'm going to do the thing anyway. And I'm going to act in courage. Maybe I'm going to act in spite of the fear to make these changes. What was people's reaction whenever you did say, okay, I'm going to love like startup life and maybe change from accounting into more startup avenue or direction?
I across the board, it wasn't exactly a yay, good for you, you go get them, girl. It was more, are you crazy? What is happening? You're throwing away all of this education. And I didn't want to disappoint people. I think it was less about saying I finally have the confidence to do this, at least for me. It was more, I am very clearly not happy going along the path that I have been going on, and I'm frustrated by it. And I'm really scared that the rest of my life could feel this way. And so it was more a fear of having that feeling of unhappiness and unsettledness be my life that drove me to make this change. So it was more a fear and less confidence. Confidence came over time. A lot of people said, oh, what you're doing is too risky. You shouldn't do it. Mm-hmm. And at first I thought, well, maybe they're right. Let me think about that a little bit. And over time, I started to realize that what people were actually saying is your choice is really risky. And that's not a decision that I would ever make for myself. Mm-hmm. But they were projecting a lot of that onto me by saying, so therefore you shouldn't make it. So I think a lot of confidence is becoming comfortable with your own choices, so comfortable with your own choices that you're okay with other people not necessarily getting them. And that's a big part of confidence for me.
That's so good. I hope that some students really take in what you're saying and realize that, man, maybe I don't need other people's approval to make these decisions like I thought I did. Because maybe there's students that are living for their parents right now. They might be going down a degree that they don't really like, but their parents want them to do. And so they just find themselves like living in that. Or they might think that their friends see them as cool if they do this major. And so because of the social pressures, they're doing this degree, right? Or for status, whatever the means is. But I'm curious about the lifelong learning piece that we were talking about earlier, of how you continued to learn all that you could, and still today, or just have like this learning mindset that I was really drawn to. Could you share your journey of learning after college for us?
Absolutely. So a lot of people, I think, approach college with, okay, after graduation, my learning is done. And now I'm going to go jump into this career and build this thing. And to me, it's different. I think graduation marks a transition in learning. It might be you're done with learning in a college sense, but you start a new learning journey that you absolutely have to take ownership of yourself. And that's this idea of being a lifelong learner. You know, careers these days rarely follow one set path, right? Most people's careers after college, you're bouncing all over the place. The skill sets that you need to be successful in the workforce today, God, they evolve so quickly. It's so hard to just keep up from year to year. And it's this idea of lifelong learning that will help anybody stay relevant in what it is that they're doing. I also think lifelong learning has a very strong impact on happiness. So it turns out that my application of lifelong learning over the past year has largely focused on this idea of happiness and coaching. I want to make sure my skills are up to date so that I can be the best teacher for my students that I can possibly be. And it turns out that this idea of constantly evolving yourself and giving yourself new goals to go after, finding new ways for you to grow and create new communities and new relationships, that has a really strong impact on my own personal happiness. So that's sort of what got us to the stuff that we're talking about right now for me.
Yes, yes. You took a Harvard class, if I remember, about happiness, right? Or lifelong learning. Can you share some findings that you learned through that class?
Absolutely. And so I'm going to actually tell you a couple of classes that I've taken because, to be fair, the information from one class sort of makes its way into what I'm learning in another class. And a lot of times I can't remember which piece of information came from which source. So over the past roughly year or so, I have been doing a couple of different things. One was a Harvard class on happiness. I believe it was called Managing Happiness, and it's free for anybody who's interested in it. They make it available through their edX platform. And I have to say, it was a real eye-opener for me. I've also taken a class in disruptive strategy. I've done some work in positive intelligence through positiveintelligence.com, and I've done a class in coaching mastery. And so all of these things start to overlap. Some of the most important things that I've learned, though, is the idea that happiness is not the opposite of unhappiness. That happiness and unhappiness actually operate as their own separate processes. And I think that's a really powerful tool to use when we think about lifelong learning and what does success look like to us. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever faced a situation in your life where you just felt unhappy and you thought, well, let me change this and maybe that'll make me happy? And then that didn't work and you thought, well, let me change this and maybe that'll make me happy. Does that resonate with you at all?
Absolutely, yeah? Yes.
Okay, it does with me. And to be quite frank, it resonates with most of the students that I interact with. The challenge is when we try to take away unhappiness, even if we are successful, that doesn't always directly correlate to an increase in happiness. We have to treat them as two separate processes, right? So we can work on getting rid of unhappiness, but we also have to focus on increasing the happiness that we do have. And that requires a lot of work on us as an individual. We have to understand what impacts our own happiness. We need to understand what drives it for us. We need to find ways to tap into that more often. And so I've had this, I don't know, these are things that I think I've known for a long time. I just never had the words to be able to describe them.
Yes.
So one of the one of the other things that I've been working on, I told you, positive intelligence, and I'm working with a group of people. It's a peer accountability group in this, and we do this work called PQ training. And the idea behind PQ training is that we all inside of us have saboteurs, and these are the voices in our heads that try to influence us by using negative emotions, right? Like, you're not doing enough. You can't be happy until you do more. Your work isn't perfect. You're not going to be able to be happy until you reach perfection in your life. These are these negative saboteurs that guide many of our decisions. And oftentimes we don't even recognize that they're guiding us. The PQ work also says you have certain sages that you can tap into. And these are the more positive inspirations in our life. This is, no, you're not perfect. And that's absolutely okay. You can keep trying.
Yes.
So the idea behind this is that the more we think about it and the more we train our brain to go down the neural pathways that are created by positive things, the more likely we are to be able to have an impact on increasing our happiness. Does that make sense?
This is so interesting. I'm curious to hear yours about what you say to yourself to help your neurological pathways go down the positive route.
That's a great question. And to be honest, it's a question that I'm still working on, right? I'm just learning this. And I think that's another part of lifelong learning, is accepting the fact that you're not going to just go learn something and be an expert at it overnight. There's this constant need to practice and get better and to continue to integrate whatever it is you're learning into your life. But what I'm working on right now is one of my personal saboteurs is called the restless saboteur.
Okay. Tell us about it.
So the restless saboteur tells you, it tricks your mind into believing that there's always something better that you could be looking for. No matter what it is that you have going on, if you get a new opportunity to do something, it might be better. So you should explore it as well. And that is 100% me. 100% me. Yes, absolutely. So the founder of this strategy, this PQ strategy, describes it as people who are guided by a strong, restless saboteur dig a lot of really shallow wells. And they might find water, they might not, but they're digging all these really shallow wells. Okay. What my sage tells me that I should be doing is catching myself when my brain is giving me these directions that I realize I don't necessarily want to follow. That my sage comes in and says, hang on just a second. Do you really need to take on this new opportunity? What can you give up that you have going on right now in order to take the new opportunity if I decide it's a yes? The sage says, you've got to get more comfortable saying no. And the sage says, hey, remember how this impacts you negatively. So when I have all of these things going on, I have a really hard time being present during a lot of what I'm doing. And sometimes that's being present, at an important meeting at work. Sometimes that means being present when I'm at home watching TV with my husband. And if I'm failing in those areas, for me, I'm failing kind of at my life. So it's a constant trying to improve so that I can be the type of person that I want to be. So with the well analogy, the way that he explains it, instead of digging all of these shallow wells that may or may not pay off, what if you focused on really being present? Dig a couple of really, really deep wells, find that continuous source of water that is going to feed you over and over and over again. And that imagery has really stuck with me. And over the past few weeks, I've been testing myself with this. So I'm practicing saying no more. I am practicing when I hear my brain start to go somewhere it's not supposed to, like, hey, come back to the moment, like actually enjoy what it is that you're doing now. So that's kind of how I'm implementing this.
That is awesome. I love how you're practicing and training your brain so that it serves you better and it serves the people around you better as well, because then you'll be more present in your work and at home with your husband, right? And allow you to just have more enjoyment out of life and what you're doing. So thank you for sharing that. First off, opening up to who Jennifer is and her sage, right? And how it can help you. And for anyone who might be considering, man, I want to know more about this. Like, how do I take one of these classes? You said to just go on, and they're free, the Harvard classes?
So not all of them. Some of the ones that I have taken have been free. Others we've paid for.
Okay.
But I would suggest for the happiness one, go look at Harvard edX and take a look at what this class is. It is a commitment, and there is a schedule that you need to stick to progress with your learning, but it is freely available. For the work with your sages and your saboteurs, check out positiveintelligence.com and you can learn more about it.
Perfect. What did you share a coaching one as well, a mastery coaching that you did?
Yeah, so I recently took a coaching mastery course, again at Harvard. That's actually how I found out about the happiness course, interestingly enough. And I did it because I wanted to improve my skills coaching students. I do a lot of work, and it's one of the best parts of my job, honestly, is getting to coach students while they're in college, getting to coach alumni after they've graduated and they're building these amazing careers and ventures. And I wanted to make sure my skills were fresh. So to this idea of happiness, part of my personal definition of happiness is feeling like I'm constantly able to grow and able to stay confident in my skills.
Yeah.
And lifelong learning helps me be confident that my skills are at a good place to help people. I'll tell you something that I learned from the coaching course. I'm pretty sure it came from the coaching course. It's the idea that our brain controls a lot of what we tap into when we're thinking about ourselves. So here's how it works. Have you ever been in a situation where maybe you get an assignment back or you get a review from your boss and they tell you 5 things, and 4 of those things are like, these are amazing, they're all fabulous, keep up the great work. And there's that one thing that's like, but this could use a little bit of improvement. And all you can think about for the next little bit is that one area of improvement. Does that resonate with you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Why do we do that?
So I don't know that I can answer the 100% why we do it, but I can tell you some little tips and tricks that I have learned that have put it into a different perspective for me. So one of those, one of the reasons that scientists think we may do that deals with our hormones. So when we have a positive experience or we hear something positive, it taps into the happy centers of our brain, right? Through brain scans, they can actually watch what part of your brain lights up when you experience something good. And we end up releasing happy hormones.
Happy hormones.
Happy hormones, right? It's the coolest thing. I get these cool little visuals of, happy hormones going off in my brain. But when we experience something negative, it activates a different part of our brain, and it activates different hormones, stress hormones. Now, I can't say this with 100% certainty. I've just started investigating the science behind this, but what I have been taught is that our body metabolizes stress hormones much slower than it metabolizes happy hormones. So our happy hormones don't stay with us as long as our stress hormones do. And a lot of scientists think that this is a holdover from, our safety, our security, our ability to survive things that were bad. When we were in a happy situation, that was cool, but it didn't necessarily help us survive. When we were in a stressful situation, we needed to hold on to that stress because it made us better at responding to danger. So tie that back into we're getting, feedback on an assignment and all we can remember is the bad thing. When we metabolize the happy hormones faster, it doesn't stay with us as long. When we metabolize the stress hormones associated with that one thing that we can improve on, that stays with us for longer. So the pathways in our brain that are activated with the negative actually get activated for a little bit longer. Now, do that continuously over time, and those negative neural pathways get more reinforced than the positive ones do. When you start to think about it that way, the next time after hearing this, I hope it does, for those that are listening, the same thing that it did for me. Because once I learned that and I started hearing negative things, I was like, oh my gosh, that's reinforcing my negative pathways. Let me also think of some positive things so that I can build up both muscles, if you will, at the same time. And that's made such a significant difference in my life. And this is relatively new learning for me that's happened over the past few months. So I can't wait to see the impact that it's going to have on me after I've been practicing this for a couple of years.
You're a testimony of what even a couple months can do whenever you're working that muscle, counteracting the one bad negative with 4 or 5 more positive things every time that you feel a negative emotion. Did I say that right?
Yeah, and it's one of the things that I think we have to be very careful about is thinking of it as all negative emotions are bad, right? Negative emotions are not bad. Negative emotions sort of alert us to things that we need to think about and we need to process, and we might even need to adapt to and fix. So they're good. We just don't want to dwell on them. We don't want to stay in the negative. There's a whole part of psychology that has been really inspirational to me, and it's positive psychology. And I've been trying to integrate positive psychology into my classes for years now. Positive psychology says, you know what, let's try to identify the things that are really working in somebody's life, and let's figure out how do we amplify those things. Instead of saying, let's only focus on the things that are bad and try to fix the things that are bad. And that to me is, I don't know, maybe that's a summary of a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. How do you find the things that are good? How do you find the things that are working? How do you find the things that help you on your journey towards your definition of success? The things that help you on your journey to maintaining a certain state of happiness. How do we identify those things and then use them to our benefit? There's absolutely, in my opinion, an absolutely outstanding TED Talk by a guy named Sean Aker on positive psychology. Highly recommend it. It's at the end of every semester, I ask my students, like, what are some of your favorite things that we did all semester? And his TED Talk is regularly listed as one of the favorite things we did out of a whole semester of work.
Awesome. That's awesome. What would you say is a piece of advice to educators and parents of Gen Z based on what you've learned about Gen Z?
That's just a great question. And, it's something that I think about pretty regularly. I think educators and parents need to find a happy balance of supporting people along their journey to adulthood in ways that make sense for them, while also letting them face enough struggle and enough disappointment that they build the skill sets necessary to actually deal with stresses, right? It's sort of like, I heard an analogy from somewhere, and I can't remember where, that said building up your ability to be resilient is sort of like building up your ability to resist an illness. You get minor exposures, you build up a tolerance, so the next time you're exposed to, the flu, your body's better able to fight it. Well, being able to deal with stressors works in much the same way. If we're exposed to little stressors, little struggles, little things that we need to overcome, when it comes time for us to deal with the big stuff, we've built those muscles up. We've built that ability to respond better. So one of the things that I see with a lot of Gen Z is that so many of those little opportunities are taken away from them, because so much of what they deal with, and it's nothing against parents or educators, right? It's necessary. People growing up today deal with so much stuff. that prior generations really didn't have to. And parents and educators, anybody who deals with young people, has had to adapt to help protect them from some of the things that their brains just aren't ready to deal with yet. But it's finding ways to let them have these experiences to help them be stronger adults. So the advice is really find a good balance, help young people build up the muscles that they need to adapt and succeed. And I think another piece of advice is be careful that you're not forcing your ways of thinking on younger people, right? Your child's definition of success may be slightly different than yours. And it doesn't mean that they hate you. It doesn't mean that they're rebelling against everything you've taught them. It just means they define success a little bit differently. And that can be really, really hard to deal with. So just stay open-minded, I think, would be the other piece of advice.
Stay open-minded. Jennifer, this has been such a good conversation. Thank you so much for all the insight that you brought to this episode. And I'm sure listeners that are hearing this are just like, man, I got to go check out all these resources that Jennifer has shared, because there's so many great things that you gave us insight to check out even further. So thank you for that. And if people want to connect with you, say, I want to speak with Jennifer, how should they get in contact or connect with you?
That's a great question. And you're welcome. I'm happy to share these resources. They've been very impactful for me. So I love being able to spread the word about them. For people who want to meet me, honestly, I would say if you're near the NC State environment, check out the events and activities that we have going on. Many of them are open to the public. Come on over, find me. You'll be able to ask around, be like, hey, where's Jen? And somebody will point me out. And I would love for you to come over and say hello and get a chance to meet you. Other ways would be, you're welcome to look me up through NC State and send me an email. It might take me a little while to get back to you, but I will eventually get back to you, I promise. But the best way is show up at one of the events and say hello. I'd love to get to know you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. And thank you to our listeners. If you want to connect with us, you can follow us on Instagram at Greater East NC. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast so that you get a notification for the rolling out episodes that drop every other week. And like this episode if you want more. So we will see you guys on the next episode. Thanks again. Bye.
Bye.